The morning of June 12th, 2004, started like any other Saturday in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The Rodriguez family lived in a modest three-bedroom house on Maple Street, where the smell of fresh coffee always filled the kitchen by 7 o'clock. Maria Rodriguez stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, while her husband, Carlos, read the newspaper at the table. Their daughters, 16-year-old Isabella and 14-year-old Camilla, were still asleep upstairs, or so their parents thought. Maria called up the stairs twice before climbing them herself, her slippers padding softly on the worn carpet. When she pushed open the door to the girls' shared bedroom, the beds were empty, made but empty. A note sat on Isabella's pillow, written in her careful handwriting. "Mom and Dad went to the river trail for an early walk. Back by lunch. Love you." Carlos didn't think much of it when Maria showed him the note. The Pequannock River Trail was popular with locals, especially on beautiful June mornings. The girls had walked it dozens of times. Still, something gnawed at Maria's stomach, a mother's instinct she couldn't quite name. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue bringing you these powerful true stories. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, when the girls still hadn't returned, Carlos called the police. Officer Dennis Walsh arrived within 20 minutes, his expression already serious when he saw Maria's tear-streaked face. Missing teenagers were more common than most people wanted to admit, but something about the Rodriguez case struck him differently. These weren't runaways. Isabella was an honor student planning to attend Yale. Camilla played violin in the school orchestra and had just won a regional competition. Their rooms showed no signs of planning an escape, no missing clothes or emptied piggy banks. The search began immediately. Volunteers from Sacred Heart Church, where the family attended Mass every Sunday, joined police officers and K-9 units along the river trail. The path stretched for nearly 5 miles, winding through dense woods and opening occasionally to reveal the slow-moving brown water of the Pequannock. By nightfall, they'd found nothing, no torn clothing, no signs of struggle, no indication the girls had ever been there at all. Detective Rachel Foster took over the investigation on Monday morning. A 20-year veteran with the Bridgeport Police Department, she'd worked dozens of missing persons cases. But the Rodriguez sisters presented a puzzle that defied her experience. She interviewed the girls' friends, teachers, and neighbors. Everyone described Isabella as responsible and protective of her younger sister. Camilla was quieter, more introspective, but devoted to her family. Neither girl had mentioned problems at home or school. Neither had secret boyfriends or online relationships that their friends knew about. The weeks turned into months. The investigation expanded beyond the river trail. Police checked bus stations, train records, hospital admissions. They interviewed registered sex offenders within a 50-mile radius. Carlos stopped going to work at the construction company where he'd been employed for 15 years. Maria stopped eating. Their house became a shrine to the missing girls, photographs covering every surface, vigil candles burning day and night. By August, the media had moved on to other stories. By October, even the most dedicated volunteers had returned to their normal lives. The Rodriguez family existed in a kind of suspended animation, unable to grieve because there were no bodies, unable to hope because there were no leads. Detective Foster kept the case file open on her desk, reviewing it weekly. But even she had to admit the trail had gone completely cold. The years that followed were cruel in their monotony. Every birthday, every holiday, every graduation that should have been celebrated became another reminder of absence. Carlos and Maria's marriage frayed under the weight of their grief. They stopped attending church. They stopped talking to neighbors. Their house on Maple Street became known as the sad place, the one where those girls disappeared. Isabella would have graduated high school in 2006. She would have been accepted to Yale, would have studied biology, would have become a doctor. Camilla would have followed 2 years later, pursuing music at Juilliard. These phantom futures haunted Maria more than any nightmare could. She kept the girls' rooms exactly as they'd left them, dusting weekly, changing sheets monthly, as if preparing for a return that would never come. Detective Foster retired in 2012, but she gave her personal cell phone number to the Rodriguez family. "If anything ever comes up," she said, "call me, day or night. I don't care if I'm 100 years old." She meant it. The Rodriguez case had become personal, a failure that kept her awake some nights, wondering what she'd missed, what clue had been right in front of her that she'd been too blind to see. Carlos died in 2015, his heart giving out at 63. The doctors said it was a massive coronary, but Maria knew better. He died of a broken heart, of carrying unbearable weight for too long. At his funeral, fewer than 20 people came. The community had long since forgotten the tragedy that had consumed the Rodriguez family. Maria stood alone at the graveside, staring at the coffin, wondering if Carlos had finally found peace, if perhaps he'd found their daughters in whatever came after. Maria continued living in the house on Maple Street, now truly alone. Her sister, Teresa, came by twice a week with groceries and company, but Maria had become a ghost herself, haunting the rooms of her own home. She was 71 years old in the summer of 2023, her hair completely white, her hands twisted with arthritis. She still walked to the Pequannock River sometimes, standing on the bank, staring at the water as if it might finally give up its secrets. On September 3, 2023, a local environmental group called Riverkeepers organized a cleanup day along the Pequannock. Volunteers spread out along the trail with trash bags and grabbers, pulling decades of accumulated garbage from the water and undergrowth. A college student named Marcus Webb waded into a shallow section near the old stone bridge, using his grabber to fish out a rusted shopping cart. Something caught his eye, wedged between rocks in about 2 feet of water. At first, he thought it was just another piece of trash, but as he got closer, he realized it was a phone. Not a modern smartphone, but one of those old flip phones from the early 2000s, encased in a waterproof bag that had somehow remained partially intact for nearly 2 decades. Marcus pulled the phone from the water, examining it with curiosity. The waterproof bag had degraded significantly, but it had done its job long enough to matter. He brought it to the cleanup coordinator, who recognized it for what it potentially was and immediately called the police. The phone sat on Detective James Martinez's desk 2 hours later. Martinez was young, 34, and had only joined the Bridgeport Police Department in 2018, but he'd heard about the Rodriguez case. Every detective in the department knew about it. It was the big unsolved mystery, the one that had haunted Detective Foster for years. He called the department's tech specialist, a woman named Linda Chen, who had worked miracles with damaged electronics before. She looked at the phone, the waterproof bag, and shook her head. "I can't promise anything," she said. "This thing's been underwater for God knows how long, but I'll try." It took Linda 3 days. She carefully disassembled the phone in a clean room, using tools that looked more appropriate for surgery than electronics repair. The battery was completely corroded, useless. The screen was dead, but the SIM card and internal memory chip, protected by the phone's casing and the waterproof bag, had survived. When Linda finally extracted the data and loaded it onto her computer, her hands started shaking. There were text messages, call logs, and most importantly, a voice recording. She listened to it once, felt tears stream down her face, and immediately called Detective Martinez. Maria Rodriguez received the call on a Tuesday afternoon. Detective Martinez asked if he could come to her house, if her sister could be there with her. The tone of his voice made Maria's chest tighten. For 19 years, she'd both longed for and dreaded this call. News meant answers, but answers often meant endings. Martinez arrived with Linda Chen and a victim services counselor. They sat in Maria's living room, surrounded by photographs of two smiling girls who would never age beyond 16 and 14. Teresa held her sister's hand as Martinez explained about the phone, about where it was found, about what it contained. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said gently, "we've confirmed through the phone records that this device belonged to Isabella. The phone company still had their old records. This was her number." Maria's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What was on it?" Martinez glanced at Linda, who pulled out a tablet. "There's a voice recording," Linda said. "It's 18 minutes long. It was recorded on June 12, 2004, starting at 9:47 a.m. Mrs. Rodriguez, I need to prepare you. This is going to be extremely difficult to hear." Maria straightened her spine, drawing on reserves of strength she'd thought were long depleted. "I've waited 19 years, she said. "Play it." Linda pressed play, and Isabella's voice filled the room. Young, frightened, but trying to stay calm. The quality was poor, water-damaged and crackling, but the words were clear enough. "Mom, Dad, if anyone finds this, we're in trouble. We went to the river trail like we said in the note, and this man approached us near the stone bridge. He seemed nice at first, asked if we'd seen his dog. 'A golden retriever,' he said. We helped him look for a few minutes, and then everything happened so fast." Isabella's voice cracked, and in the background Camilla could be heard crying softly. "He had a gun. He forced us into his van. It's dark blue, maybe a Dodge, I'm not sure. He's driving now, heading north on I-95. I managed to get my phone out and put it in the waterproof bag you bought me for the school camping trip, Mom. Remember? I'm going to try to throw it out the window near where he took us, near the bridge. Maybe someone will find it, maybe." There was a long pause, filled only with the sound of tires on pavement and Camilla's quiet sobbing. Isabella's voice continued, steadier now, as if she'd made a decision about what was important to say while she still could. "His name is Robert. I heard him talking on his phone. He's maybe 45, 50 years old, brown hair going grey. He has a scar on his left hand between his thumb and first finger. He's wearing a blue work shirt with a name patch, but I couldn't read it. He keeps saying we're going somewhere safe, that he just wants to talk to us. But I don't believe him." The sound of the van's engine hummed steadily in the recording. Camilla's voice came through, small and terrified. "Isabella, I'm scared. I know, baby, I know. Just stay calm. Mom and Dad will find us. The police will find us." Isabella's voice was doing what it always did, protecting her little sister, even in the worst moment of their lives. Detective Martinez sat forward in his chair as the recording continued. This was evidence, real evidence, the first substantial lead the case had ever had. He was already mentally cataloguing details. Blue Dodge van, heading north on I-95. A man named Robert, with a scar and a work shirt. Isabella spoke again, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "He's turning off the highway. I see a sign for Route 8 North. We're heading toward the state line, I think. Camilla, when I count to 3, squeeze my hand." There was a pause. "Good girl. We're going to be okay." But the tremor in Isabella's voice betrayed her words. She knew they might not be okay. That's why she was recording everything, committing every detail to the phone's memory while she threw it from the van window, hoping the waterproof bag would protect it long enough for someone to find it. There are warehouses on both sides now, old ones. Some of them look abandoned. He's slowing down. Oh, God. He's turning onto a dirt road. I can't see a street sign. There's a rusted gate. It's open. Some kind of industrial area. I see a water tower in the distance with rust all over it. There's writing on it, but I can't make it out from here. The sound of gravel crunching under tires filled the recording. The van was slowing down significantly now. Isabella's breathing had become rapid, panicked, though she was trying to control it. "Camila, listen to me. No matter what happens, I love you. Mom and Dad love you. Remember that, okay? Isabella, don't... Shh. I'm throwing the phone now. I love you all so much." There was a sudden whooshing sound, then impact, then the distant sound of the van driving away. The phone had landed somewhere outside the van, and for the next several minutes, the recording captured only ambient noise. Wind in trees, the faint sound of the river in the distance, birds calling. Then, impossibly, Isabella's voice returned, much fainter now, carried on the wind. She must have been screaming as loud as she could for the phone to pick it up. "Someone help us! Please! We're at the..." The rest was lost to distance and wind. The recording continued for another 12 minutes, but there were no more voices, just the sounds of the Connecticut woods in early summer. Finally, the recording stopped, the phone's battery presumably dying or the recording limit reached. The room on Maple Street was silent for a long moment after the recording ended. Maria sat perfectly still, tears streaming down her face, her sister's arms wrapped around her. The counselor was crying too. Even Detective Martinez had to wipe his eyes. "My baby," Maria whispered. "My brave baby girl. She tried to save them. She tried to leave us a way to find them." Martinez pulled himself together, his grief hardening into determination. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this gives us more to work with than we've had in 19 years. We have a suspect description, a vehicle description, a general direction and timeline. We have a first name. We're going to find out what happened to your daughters." Over the next 72 hours, the Bridgeport Police Department launched the most intensive investigation in the city's modern history. Martinez assembled a task force of 6 detectives, pulling in resources from the state police and FBI. They started with the basics, reviewing every missing persons case, every unsolved murder, every sexual assault along the I-95 corridor in Connecticut from 2004 onward. The name Robert was a starting point, but not much of one. The description was better, a man in his 40s with graying brown hair and a distinctive scar. They pulled work records from every company that used name patches on their uniforms in 2004. Utility companies, repair services, delivery drivers, maintenance contractors. Linda Chen worked 16-hour days enhancing the audio recording, trying to pull out any additional details they might have missed. She isolated background sounds, filtering out wind and static. On her 4th pass through the audio, she caught something. In the final minutes of the recording, before the battery died, there was a very faint mechanical sound, rhythmic and industrial. She called in an audio forensics expert from the FBI field office in New Haven. Special Agent Thomas Brennan listened to the isolated sound 3 times before rendering his verdict. "It's a compressor," he said. "Industrial air compressor, probably from a factory or warehouse. The rhythm suggests it was cycling on and off, which means it was maintaining pressure for active equipment." This narrowed the search considerably. Martinez and his team began mapping every industrial facility within a reasonable driving distance north of Bridgeport on I-95 and Route 8. In 2004, there had been dozens. Abandoned factories from Connecticut's manufacturing heyday, warehouse complexes, industrial parks. They were looking for a location with 3 specific features: proximity to Route 8 North, an old water tower with rust and visible writing, and active industrial equipment in 2004. A young detective named Amy Flores took charge of this aspect, spending days at the state archives, reviewing aerial photographs and industrial surveys from the early 2000s. On the 6th day of the investigation, Flores walked into Martinez's office with a map covered in red circles. "I found 7 possibilities," she said, spreading the map on his desk. "But this one..." She tapped a location about 40 minutes north of Bridgeport, near the town of Waterbury. "This one matches everything." Martinez looked at the aerial photograph she'd pulled from 2003. The facility had been called Riverside Manufacturing, a textile plant that had closed in 1998. The property included 3 large warehouse buildings, a smaller administrative building, and critically, a water tower. The photograph quality wasn't good enough to read the writing on the tower, but the rust patterns were visible even from the air. "There's more," Flores said. "The property was sold in 2005 to a development company that tore down everything except the water tower in 2007. But here's the thing, in 2004, a security company still maintained the property. They had a contract to check it weekly and keep squatters out. Do we have records of who worked for that security company?" "Already pulled them." Flores handed him a folder. The company was called Guardian Security Services. They went out of business in 2009, but I found their old employment records. In June 2004, they had 12 employees doing regular patrol rounds. I've got names and last known addresses for all of them. Martinez opened the folder, scanning the list of names. His finger stopped on the 6th one, Robert Henley, age 48 in 2004, which would make him 67 now. The employment photo showed a man with brown hair going grey, and in the photo, his left hand was visible on the desk in front of him. There, between his thumb and first finger, was a distinctive scar. The task force descended on Robert Henley's last known address in Naugatuck, Connecticut, at 6 o'clock the following morning. The house was a small ranch with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. 2 unmarked cars blocked the driveway, while Martinez and 4 other officers approached the front door, hands on their weapons. Martinez knocked hard. "Robert Henley, Bridgeport Police, we need to speak with you." No answer. He knocked again, identifying himself once more. When there was still no response, they breached the door with a battering ram. The house smelled of cigarettes and neglect. Newspapers were stacked in corners, dating back years. Fast food containers covered the coffee table, but the house was empty. Robert Henley wasn't home. They found him an hour later at his workplace. He'd gotten a job as a night janitor at a shopping mall in Waterbury after Guardian Security went under. When Martinez and 2 other officers approached him in the mall's maintenance room at 7:30 a.m., Henley was eating a sandwich, preparing to end his shift. He looked up as they entered, and for just a moment, his expression confirmed everything. The guilt was there, flashing across his face before he could mask it with confusion. "Can I help you, officers? Robert Henley?" Martinez kept his hand near his weapon, though Henley appeared unarmed. "That's me. What's this about?" "We need you to come with us to answer some questions about June 12th, 2004. Henley's face went pale. He set down his sandwich very carefully, his scarred left hand trembling. I don't remember that date specifically. That was a long time ago." "It was a Saturday," Martinez said. "You were working for Guardian Security Services. You were doing patrols of the old Riverside manufacturing site near Waterbury, and that morning you drove to Bridgeport, to the Pequannock River Trail. You took 2 girls, Isabella and Camila Rodriguez. We have evidence, Robert. We have recordings. We know what you did." The silence that followed lasted perhaps 10 seconds, but it felt infinite. Henley's shoulders sagged, and suddenly he looked every one of his 67 years. "I'd like to speak to a lawyer," he said quietly. They arrested him on the spot, reading him his Miranda rights in the mall's maintenance room. As they led him out in handcuffs, early morning shoppers stopped and stared. By noon, the story would be all over the news. The Rodriguez case, cold for 19 years, had finally broken open. Henley refused to speak without his attorney present, which was his right. But the evidence spoke for him. A search warrant for his house uncovered a collection of newspaper clippings about the Rodriguez disappearance, kept in a shoebox in his bedroom closet. There was a journal filled with rambling entries that never quite confessed, but circled around his guilt like a moth around a flame. The FBI's evidence response team processed the old Riverside manufacturing site, though it had been torn down and redeveloped years ago. Using ground-penetrating radar on the undeveloped portions of the property, they found what they were looking for on the third day of searching. Two sets of remains, buried in a wooded area behind where the main warehouse had stood. DNA analysis confirmed what Maria Rodriguez already knew in her heart. Isabella and Camilla had been found. After 19 years of searching, of hoping, of living in agonizing limbo, there was finally an answer. It wasn't the answer anyone had wanted, but it was truth. And truth at least allowed for grieving. Robert Henley's court-appointed attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor's office wasn't interested. They had too much evidence, too strong a case. The trial began in April 2024, in a Bridgeport courthouse packed with spectators and media. The prosecution presented the phone recording, which was played in its entirety for the jury. Several jurors were openly crying by the end. They presented the evidence from Henley's home, his employment records, placing him at the Riverside site with access and opportunity. They presented testimony from the FBI forensic team about where and how the remains were found.